So it's been a while. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing anymore with my life. Anyway, so I guess I'm gonna keep, talking about book series or whatever that I read because honestly, I'm like really enjoying talking about it. So I'm doing this the old-fashioned way where I'm just holding my phone because I don't have not iPod, my computer because it's in the car because I'm leaving in about an hour or so to go back to school. And so I haven't made this yet because I've been busy, doing a bunch of sports and stuff. So we are talking about the Divergent series. We have Divergent, Allegiant, and I forget the second book. Anyway, so what is Divergent? I think Divergent is amazing, honestly. Just reading it, I finished it 2 weeks ago, and I still absolutely love it. I never hear anyone talk about Divergent in the same category as amazing book series. Like, you hear about Twilight, you hear about Harry Potter, you hear about Hunger Games. I never hear anyone mention Divergent except my friend Alyssa. She's like the only one. And so she's the one that convinced me to read it. And I didn't even know if I was going to like it because I'm like, what's a Divergent? So let's just start going through the books. So the first book, we start with the main character, Beatrice Pryor. So it's in first person, we have Beatrice Pryor, okay? She has her brother Caleb and her two parents, and they're in abnegation. Now, there are these 5 different factions or groups. It's like your Hogwarts houses, but they are called factions in this book. You have abnegation, you have amity, you have erudite, you have dauntless, and you have candor. So those are your 5 factions, and they all sort of have different traits about them. Like, abnegation, they are selfless. They are the rulers because they say people who don't want power are the ones who are best at ruling, basically. Candor are your honest people, your smart aleck, the one that say whatever comes to mind and don't give the flip what people think. Your erudites are your smart people, your brainiac, the one that seek to know knowledge. Your dauntless are your crazy people that are jumping on the trains and doing a bunch of crazy stunts, and they are fearless. And your amity are your peacekeepers. They are the ones that want everything to be calm, cool, and collected. So, what did they say? 16. Yeah, I almost said 11. 16. You live in one faction, whatever your faction you're born in. And then you can trade and go to any one of these factions that you want to. So it comes to choosing day. And Caleb goes to Beatrice and is like, you know what? We don't have to be in navigation if you don't want to. Follow your passion. She chooses Dauntless. Okay? And Caleb chooses chooses erudite. This will be important later. So, like, 2 kids, both, their dad mainly, I guess, is upset because both his kids left their faction. And we start on Beatrice's story, okay? So, she is part of a group of 9 who are all transfers. So, you have little groups. You have Beatrice, who just goes by Trish now, and she has her friend Will and Al, just go by Al, and Christina is one group. Those are like the good guys, then you have your group of bullies. You have Peter, you have Molly and Drew, and then you just have Mara and Edward, who don't play much into the first book, but they're just there. And you have all these other characters like Uriah, you have Lynn, you have Marlene. About half the people I just named this sentence dies by the end of the book series, okay? So we go through, like she going through training. You start with 20 people and only the top 10 survive. You are becoming factionless. Factionless is a whole nother thing where basically you drive the buses. You are homeless. You are nothing because you don't have a faction that you can belong to. You don't get claimed by anyone because you failed your dauntless initiation. So we go through the whole first book basically. She's the top person. She can get out of these simulations because simulation is basically what runs everyone, and they have a bunch of these serums. It's this whole complicated system. And on the night that she's crowned number 1 or whatever, there's an attack. She's in Dauntless, goes and attack abnegation, but she isn't affected by the serum, so everyone else is mind controlled. And her boyfriend, or Tobias, since they are divergent, which means they can fit into any faction that they're choosing. And so Beatrice has similarities for Dauntless, Abnegation, and Erudite, so she could fit into any 3 of them and think the way they do. And so that is important because they want to kill the Divergent because they're like, the Divergents are bad. So they do the attack on Abnegation, a bunch of people die, and then they're about to kill Beatrice. Her mom comes in. She finds out her mom, A, was a Divergent, B, was in Dauntless before switching to Abnegation. Her mom dies. And then Beatrice had to shoot her friend Will, who I mentioned earlier, and she had PTSD for the rest of the book series. Then they're like, okay, we have to go stop this simulation so everyone stop being mind-controlled. So they go and try to stop the simulation. Her dad dies. Okay, so both her parents out of series. Okay, great. I'm glad that happened because it's like a 16-year-old girl. So if you think about 16-year-old girls today, it's like how you deal with the emotional trauma of like your parents and stuff like that. Just kill them off. I really appreciate that part in the series. And then she finds her boyfriend, Tobias. He is under a different kind of simulation because the main villain, Jameen Matthews, made this whole simulation where it now works on the Divergent, so he was the test subject. So she, stops him from killing everyone and killing her, and he breaks out of the funk, and, happy ever after for the first book. Great. The second book, complete and utter chaos happens, okay? And I'm sort of blanking on the title of the second book as far as what happened in the second book. It's like a lot of filler, I feel like, the second book. They go to Amity. I remember that part. They go in Amity. And mind you, I finished this 2 weeks ago, but I haven't had a chance to record this yet. So they go to Amity. They hang out there for a while. They get found by the new Dauntless traders because half of Dauntless was put in half. The people that want to eliminate the Divergent and people who feel guilty for killing all of the Abnegation people. So they are split in half. Dauntless is split in half. Erudite's taken over. All the Abnegation are basically dead. And then you have Amity, who's just chilling, the Peacekeepers, and Candor is just like, what are we doing? So then they go to Candor, okay? So they infiltrate their headquarters. They be part of Candor for a while. And this whole big thing, and the whole time, there is this secret. So the main crux of the first 2 books is that there's this secret. You have to protect this secret. Both of Beatrice's parents died for this secret. You have to keep the secret a secret. And what is the secret? At the end of book 2, we find out, after a bunch of murders and stuff like that, a whole fight scene, we find out this lady named Edith Pryor is from the past, but made a video to leave for the people in the future, basically saying how there's a group outside of the faction, that there's someone outside controlling them, and yeah, you're all in a simulation. You're all just in one giant place, and we're controlling you. And then that's basically how the second book ends, and we go to the third book, Allegiant. And everything just sort of picks up from here. There's not really a lot of stalling here. I mean, yes, you have more murders, more fights. A girl named Tori dies when they're trying to go see the new place, and so they go, and it's an airport outside of the city, and that's when they fill us in on everything from the first 2.5 books. Basically how we have Chicago, we have Indianapolis, we have Milwaukee, we have Detroit. All these cities that you know today are actually control groups and sites for the GDs, which are genetically damaged, and you have the GPs, which are the genetically pure. So the Divergents are the genetically pure, and the GD, the genetically damaged. And it's this whole thing where if you are a GD, you are the lower class. You are not as good as everyone else. And if you are the genetically pure, you are brilliant. You are amazing. And basically, Beatrice is like, this isn't right. We need to stop this. So Tobias, gets in a little bit of trouble because he tried to stop them. Kills Uriah basically in the process. He feels bad for that. And basically fast forwarding through a lot of this to get to the end. Beatrice sacrifices herself. She freaking dies. Like, I am still shocked that she died. I cried. I read this at 2:30 in the morning because I could not put it down. And I just want to talk about the end of it because Beatrice freaking Pryor is amazing. Okay, I love the ending, and then they just mourn her death for about 30 pages or whatever it seems like. They do all this stuff, and it's like Beatrice is really dead, and it just shocking because Caleb turned Beatrice over to Janine Matthews, who I mentioned earlier, so she could do a bunch of tests on her, and Janine, the main villain, turned her over to her own sister, or his own sister, turned her over to the main villain, and all this crazy stuff. So Caleb is upset, her boyfriend Tobias is upset, and it's just, wow. So that was like a brief overview of the 3-book series. I probably left out like some like a lot of the small stuff, but I feel like it's everything that Twilight isn't. I mean, you still have your love story between Tobias and Beatrice, and in Twilight you have Bella and Edward. I never really saw Jacob as a factor in it. So you still have the love story, but Twilight, there were no deaths, there were no fight scenes, there was no states. And in Divergent, there are a ton of states, just like Hunger Games, a ton of states. I really like Divergent. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I do. I think Beatrice is like one of the best female characters, and it's the first time that I ever read a book where one of the main characters died. I mean, Harry Potter, he basically did die, but he got like a second life because the part of Voldemort's soul was in him. You basically had Bella have a child rip out of her, but she was saved because she got turned into a vampire. No, there was several times where Katniss could have died in the Hunger Games and stuff, but she stayed alive the whole time. The main character died. That's the first time I've ever read a book series, and the main character was killed off. And then the story is told from Tobias' perspective for the rest of the book. And I'm just like, wow. And I love the deaths in this series because it makes, there's something worth fighting for. You basically can't have a war without deaths. And in Twilight, there was a war. No gruesome, nothing. And Divergent, I feel like it's the complete opposite. It's everything Twilight should have been. Divergent is so much better, and I can't wait for like 5, 6, 7 years so when I forget all this, I can go read it again because it is amazing. Veronica Ross. That's her name, yeah. I really like it. I have not read 4. Basically, the first book told from Tobias' view. I don't know how much that's gonna change. I don't plan on reading it, just like I don't plan on reading the Twilight book from Edward's point of view. I don't know how much that's gonna change it. I just like the core series. But no, overall that's what I think of Divergent. I think it's, again, really, really amazing. I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed out on. But no, I think I said everything I want to say. And it's like, she has PTSD from shooting her best friend and killing him. Well, that translates because there's sometime in books where the author is like, oh, they got this injury or they did this, and no consequences to what happened. Because Beatrice gets a bullet wound, she is terrified to shoot a gun. Also, partly because it's hard for her to hold the gun with her right arm because she got a wound there, but also she killed her best friend. So and it seemed like it all happened in the span of a couple months. And, you would think it might take over years, but no, this book is told in the span of a couple months, and I really like that. And you have all the faction breakdown, and you have all, the faction was ruling, and you had Tobias' parents basically fighting over control. You have the Allegiant led by Marcus, and this leader at Amity, Johanna, and they're reading Allegiant. They want the faction. Then you have Tobias' mom, Evelyn, is no, we have faction, there's no more faction, and you get them to come to a peace treaty, and just all sorts of crazy stuff. You should read it if you haven't. I think it's great, honestly. It's really a really good read. So yeah, time to go a month without uploading again, so see you in March!